and just to recap what I've been doing is I'm just going to go through the process as a student leader that you're going to go through in your first week. And so we're just going to run our session today, just like you're going to run your session. So just like you guys, we're gonna start on time, and people might be late, and that's okay. Just let them trickle in. And so in the meantime, just we can get started with introduction. So we'll just introduce these four things. So Kyle, yes, go ahead. Cool, awesome. As you can see, like, so this is Charlie. We should almost update this because like there's no way it's going to take 10 minutes, but I think it's still a kind of a key portion. So this class is a little bit unlike a lot of your other classes in the sense that it's not very lecture focused. So for those of you who've already been doing engineering for a while, you probably already realize that the best way to learn engineering stuff is just to do it. And probably if you've had other project classes already in engineering, you can understand why we think it's the most effective. However, there's two things about this class that we think is unique. Um, One thing is it's extremely practical, focused on practice, right? And so that's why choosing your own app that you really, really want to build is essential. And so it's really interesting to hear everybody's app ideas. The other aspect is this is a really heavy peer support class. So as we're going to talk about in a second, there is we like to have a no person left behind philosophy, but it's also, we're going to keep our standard. And so, hopefully the peers can help each other. And so, the first session is really important to kind of break the ice, get people to kind of like share a little bit about themselves. We've kept the class sizes deliberately small for the most cases. Many of you only have a class size of 20, 25 max. And so we want to have like a really nice intimate environment. So after you go through the introductions, I'm going to roll into this next part where I go over the kind of the goals and so on. And so the mission here is like it's pretty clear. It's pretty awesome actually. Like so, if you open up any app in the App Store, like this is how you want to introduce it. You want it like why we're here today, like with no credit, except for Purdue, no credit is that you want to be able to build any app that you see in the App Store, which is kind of really really ambitious in 12 weeks, right? And there's a lot of stuff that, of course, we're gonna hopefully get you far enough along that you're able to look it up, right? The only caveat is that it's not really tuned for games. Game development is kind of its own thing. It's a little bit separate. You can still kind of give it a try, and it depends on the game. Some games you'll be able to build, but we're really focusing on building apps. So things like Pinterest or Flickr or Instagram or Twitter, stuff like that. And we're going to prove it that you can build any app that you want because a part of the kind of the graduation of this class is you're going to build your own app in teams of 3. And another reason why we had to do the introductions is really we want to get to know people in the class and see who we're going to be compatible with, and we're going to continue to kind of do mixers and try to figure out like who we want to work with before we ultimately kind of pair you together. And then we're going to show it off in the last day. So we're going to show it off into your university, but we'd love to kind of make sure these are filmed, and we're going to see what the best apps across all universities that we're currently running at are. So we're also working really hard to make sure that anyone who has interest in internship opportunities, can potentially be lined up with that if possible. So that's only going to be for the very, very best, though, and it's easy to be the best. It's all you have to do is work like crazy. So the kind of bootcamp structure is we wanted to show you a little bit about kind of Silicon Valley expectations. So we run this exact same material at Facebook to teach them how to make their app. We run this at Dropbox. We run this at Box, Rdio, YouTube. So, we're teaching these professional engineers how to do mobile development, and we want to try to hold you to the same expectation, right? So we've kind of stretched out the class. We normally run this class in 6 weeks inside of companies. We've kind of stretched it out to 12, and so we've kind of paced things out a little bit. But in general, we still want to slowly bring you up so that you're hitting these really polished standards. So not only from a coding perspective, but they should be polished apps too. You should really strive to make them look like the best apps that you've seen on your phone. And just challenge yourself, right? And if you can't figure out how to do something, that's what we have over 42 mentors for this program, and they're waiting for you to ask them, like, hey, I did the required, but gosh, I want to do a little bit more. I saw this cool effect in this other app, and I'd like to kind of know how to do that. That's what we're here for. But we kind of have this P90X military boot camp type philosophy, which is like, look, like I get it. I skipped a lot of classes when I was in college, but If you don't show up one day, that's you're out. Now if you're sick, or you have a vacation, or whatever, you have a huge project coming up in another class. We'll allow for excused absences. You kind of let people know ahead of time, but no unexcused. That's just you student leaders are putting a lot of work into this class, and that's not really that respectful for you guys. And no incomplete submissions too. And this is just a forcing function, right? We want to make sure that everybody hits the very, very minimum bar. And again, you're out if you can't do that. The flip side of that really strict philosophy, and we do this the same, like, so when we first trained at Facebook, they said, wait, are you serious? You're going to kick our engineers out of your class? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. If they can't cut it, I don't know if they totally deserve to be here, But the flip side of that is there's tons of support for this class. And there's no cheating in this class either. iOS is, on the kind of scale of engineering, is pretty easy. From the perspective, it's not like super heavy in the algorithm space. A lot of it kind of reminds me of like working in your car, right? Like if you don't know how to change the oil in your car, it's impossible. But if you do know how to do it, it's pretty straightforward. And so many things in iOS are like that. If you don't know how to do it, well then, gosh, you're kind of hit a brick wall. But once you know how to do it, it's like, oh, that's so straightforward. And so feel free to share with your peers and encourage, peers, if they figure out how to do something. Yeah, show people the code of how to do it, right? The only thing that's cheating is literally copying someone's project and pasting it into yours. But it's totally acceptable to look at source code that's out there. You're in charge of your own learning, right? If you're getting too copy pasty and you're not really understanding what you're doing, that's not the best. But you should not feel ashamed or embarrassed to look at source code. In fact, you student leaders will have solutions for all of the projects ahead of time, and we're here to help you too. So that's the theme that you want to set. Look, it's no excuses. It's going to be really strict, and we're going to kind of do it good cop, bad cop. So CodePath is going to be the bad cop. If people are absent, unexcused, you're going to have to take attendance and let us know who actually showed up. But if people are unexcused, or people don't submit, then CodePath will send them an email and tell them they're out of the class. That means we ask them not to come to the class anymore. We ask them, we're not going to group them to a group project, or we're kind of going to remove the support structure for them. However, we're going to let you guys be the good cops. So, for example, if they come to you and they go, oh my gosh, like I slept through, I was, like some issue, like I'll never do it again, or like I just missed time, I just started too late, I just messed up. Can you just see if you can kind of maybe get us a buy? We'll allow you to exercise your discretion. If you'd like to let them back in the class, just let us know. We'll do it once per student. Don't let them know ahead of time. But trust me, like I've run this class a bunch of times with really, really senior engineers, and I used to run it without these rules, and I got totally different results. So the trick is if you're even a little bit lenient, the quality just starts to degrade really quickly. So that's the structure. It's a very intense structure. We try to make it deliberately intense, but we also want you to hit this ridiculously hard goal, which is like, you have to admit, right? If you can build any app that you see in the App Store when you leave here, like that's a pretty good achievement under your belt. That's gonna, you can take that to the bank. So next, for the kind of class tomorrow, you'll want to click through this and make sure that everyone understands the basic structure. So this is just going to link into the course portal just in the first few tabs, but the basic gist is, hey, we're going to meet twice a week. The first week is a little bit more interactive. It's a little bit more like, definitely Socratic method type stuff, discussions, try to digest what we've learned, and then there's going to be a session that's going to be a little bit more interactive, more coding heavy. So we're going to be doing weekly homeworks, kind of like wax on, wax off style, up to the point where we've assembled enough stuff that we can dive into our group project. So the class is roughly split into two. And again, there's these course policies that we're going to be very, very strict with. So the next part is just a reminder of the submissions. Now everyone's actually submitted the tip calculator already. It's the same process, but you maybe just remind that they set up their GitHub properly. This is actually critical to start using the git ignores. Each week actually prep, you just need to copy it and then just check off what you've done. And then of course you need to add in your GIF walkthrough to your README. and then create an issue so our graders can grab it. So our graders, we're going to do a quick pass as soon as the submissions are complete and start picking up the top submissions. And we're going to try to get people to get the graders to do a little bit more detailed review. It'll take about at least 72 hours, but we'll try to get that done as quickly as possible. Next is, start having people think about the group apps as soon as possible, and then we're gonna outline in the class how this will kick off. There's gonna be brainstorming, wireframing, but it's absolutely essential that you choose an app that you can't choose an app that's like, oh, I just want to learn the theory of iOS. You really want to choose an app that you're very, very excited to build. But I don't need to kind of belabor that because you guys actually already had a lot of amazing app ideas. And so finally, I want to kind of dive in to a week in review, just a sample week. So if I click on week overview, so we have a kind of a unique philosophy in our class, which is it's very light on the reading and the lectures. It's more in practice, but at the same time, it's helpful to have a little bit of context. And so we try to think about like what's the minimum context that you'll need for the class, and you should probably read this ahead of time. So for example, you'll notice that we've not formally taught you Swift, right? And that's okay. If you guys don't understand the question mark and exclamation point, which is one of the trickiest early parts, that's okay for now. But if you are one of those types that likes to learn by reading, try to give this class have a little bit more of a formal introduction. And so there's, at the beginning of the week, we'll try to have some resources to just read or review. And then the assignment is, you got to help people do that, is we actually have these little quick videos, which you guys have already gone through. And so before the session on Monday or Tuesday, your mission is to finish these videos, which you can see they're quite short, right? 8, 12, 6 minutes, and then just submit it by Sunday night just to get the ball rolling on the assignment. Then on Monday or Tuesday, depending on what school you're at, you're going to have the session that we're running today, where it will be half discussion and half other stuff. So the other stuff is going to be like working on the homework, working on the group project. It'll kind of vary depending on the week. So the notes for the week will have what you're doing. And then every Wednesday or Thursday, depending on the university, you're going to have a lab. Finally, this is one of the important parts, is that a lot of the experience that you're going to get through the class is not going to be in the sessions themselves, but it's going to be at home working on the projects. But we really encourage people to come to a Saturday session, again, just to get to know each other. But we're also going to have mentors staffed, and they'll be on call. They're giving up their Saturdays just to hang out with you guys. And Charlie and I were online on Saturday. We have mentors lined up for the next 12 Saturdays. So even if you can't, we highly recommend that you guys lead the students. But even if they are at home, they should at least jump on the Slack channel, the Saturday Hack channel, and ask any questions there. So I'm going to pause right here. I've been kind of flying through. Does anybody have any questions so far? Cool. All right. So that's the kind of the first time stuff, and then for the rest of this kind of presentation, it's going to be more standard. So every week we're going to review the top tip calculators. Or the top submissions from the previous week. And we want to set up a little bit of competitive juices. We actually started a new channel where we're going to post the top gifts across all the schools in this particular channel, so you can kind of see how you're stacking up. And so in your let me go to the student leader tab here. Everyone's going to have a kind of a dashboard for your university. So your dashboard will be filled in by your grader for the top submissions. So let me look at the CCSF dashboard, for example. And I'm just going to load real quick. And so you're going to be taking attendance in this dashboard. And also the graders will be recording the grading scores for each of the students in this dashboard. So when you kick off the session, so here's where you're going to be taking attendance. P is present, excused, absent, and then I'm going to click on our top submissions tab. Just real quick, Charlie, it seems my internet's kind of slow. Am I still coming through okay? So maybe you, unlike me, should have this open ahead of time, so there's not kind of this annoying pause. Um, I think my computer is kind of struggling with all the recordings and stuff I have going on right now. All right, so for now, we're just going to have, in the future, we might have like kind of a list of people to show that have finished the like many of the optionals. So if you look at this README for this person, so they spent 14 hours. That's fantastic. So people should be spending, if they really want to get the most out of this class, they should be spending at least 10 hours. So the goal, your mission, and you should emphasize this to the students, is not to fly through the assignments. It's just like practicing the guitar. You want to spend 10 hours, and that's what you want to communicate to them. And look at what they've done. They kind of did the required, then they did all of our optionals, and then they added a few of their own. They played a bit with the visual polish. It's coming through by chance? Okay, cool. And so if you kind of reflect on your tip calculator, and you can maybe compare like how you stacked up against like some of these top ones from this, you can kind of start to calibrate where you're getting. Of course, what you put into this class is what you get out of it, right? So if you just kind of do the bare minimum, you'll get a lot out of this class, right? But if you go to this extent, this class is going to end up being a major asset for you. So this person also, they only spent 9 hours, so they were super efficient with their time, right? If you're dropping too far under 9, you really should be adding more optionals. But look at how many optionals, and look how many like. So I'm definitely going to grab some of these and steal them. But so they also paid some attention to the visual detail, right? So they had some, and that's part of mobile engineering as well. There's an aspect of design. So they're even using the shake, and I think they even added location in here. So this is definitely in the upper tier of tip calculators here. So every week you want to show the top. Let's see if we can get some healthy competition going, and try to outdo each other. All right. So with each homework, I'd like to kind of lead the class to reflect a bit on it in various ways. So there's these questions I think we can ask for every homework, which is, what did we learn? So these are questions to you, and kind of digest the ones. I'll read them while you're thinking about them, and just think about your answers. So what you learned, what were the major challenges, what were the pro tips that you picked up along the way, like you're Googling, you found this really neat shortcut key. Maybe people know that Command A, which highlights everything, and Control I will fix indentation. And finally, like sometimes you'll get things working just because we have a lot of guides and guidance, but you won't understand, like something won't seem right to you, right? And you'll have some like lingering questions, like I got it working, but I really felt it was kind of copy paste, or I see how it was working in this situation, but it doesn't seem like this scales very well. So you want to kind of ask about unanswered questions. So feel free to chime in. So what did you learn while building the tip calculator? I'll get the ball rolling. We learned about, I learned about like how that the view controller is a single screen. So every screen has a view controller, and then it's kind of split into these two parts where I design the views and then I write the code for it. So what are the other major learnings from this week? Cool. Here's a tip for the class. When you're running the class, when you're calling in this situation, when you're kind of asking for feedback, what we'll do is we'll say, hey, anyone in the front of the class, or anyone in this row that I'm highlighting here on my screen, Lana, Fatima, Sanaya, and Jamel, what did you guys? So like you can isolate a portion of the class and just see if you can get at least a few people to kind of engage. So like if you four right here were to answer that question, if any one of you all, what else did we learn in the class? Okay. And hopefully you found your takeaway with the animation was pretty easy too, right? Once you figured it out. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Um, all right, so we'll do one more. I'll isolate kind of like Tim, Hannah, Sergio, and Lewis. What kind of any pro tips? Anything that you would have like told yourself? Like imagine you had a time machine, you traveled back a week. We're in Interstellar, and you're Matthew McConaughey trying to give some notes back. What are you telling yourself hours of time? Okay, great. So I'm gonna kind of cut this off, but for you guys, kind of keep on teasing it out with the students, and especially since you guys are leading the charge, you're 1 week ahead of them. That's an extra burden on you guys, right? That you have to both support them as well as learn yourself. But I do think it'll really accelerate your own learning. So share these things like, learn Swift ahead of time and maybe be specific, right? Like, you know what? Of all the things, I just sat down. I just learned. I read the optionals chapter, and that really cleared up a lot of things for me in the Swift book. So like. As they're reflecting, also share your learnings because you're 1 week ahead of them to see time, get them to the same learnings, but without the pain that you felt. So it's good to kind of reflect on this a little bit. And so like once you kind of finish reflecting on the last week, then you'll go into the current week. So the way that you go into the current week is you will load up kind of this thing that you'll download from us, and you'll run this app once in just the strict required tier. And so in this required tier, it's a pretty straightforward thing. It's kind of cool. It already kind of connects to an API, and you'll just demo the fact that there was a loading aspect. There's kind of pull to refresh, and it's kind of almost like glitchy that this status bar is running into the view. But that's actually part of the new iOS. Well, it's not new anymore, but iOS 7 started to introduce them because they really like this full bleed type effect. Apple did, and so normally there's a nav bar there, so but it still does kind of intersect with the status bar, so that's kind of intentional. But this is the basics. This is the bare minimum. But although you can actually see that it's kind of cool. We're able to kind of do a lot already. So next you're going to run a project which is the required tier with a few optionals, right? So you'll have the table view, but like you can maybe also have this collection view. So there was a little bit of subtlety there. So it was very quick, but I don't know if you guys noticed, but these posters, they actually faded in upon download. So there's a little bit of a polished touch here. We have now a search bar. This is now a collection view. I'm gonna search for like say Star Wars. I'm gonna see that it has it's kind of searching through all of the titles here. So here is the basic demos, and it's good to kind of show the class what our target is. And then what you want to do is you want to outline why are we doing this. So I'll tell you one thing: the apps that we're introducing to you guys, we select every required feature and every optional very carefully. We kind of thought back to the last 10 apps that we made. And we said, well, what are the most common features that we just had to do time and time again? And we kind of like ordered that in a stack, and then we use those to create the required and optional stories. So these are things that we've done a million times. We'll never waste your time with busy work. So the goals for this week are kind of three things. One, it's a basic introduction to Xcode, Storyboard, and Swift. And so, I think Sergio brought this up. To your point, to the extent that you can guide them in reading the Swift documentation, that's really good. The second is we learned how to build table views. So table views is just that feed that we saw. Why are table views important? Why did we choose table views? And so you're going to open this site called patterns.com. Patterns.com is a screenshot of about like 1 million iPhone apps. Or mobile apps, and they're just a bunch of screenshots. And so this is a tool that's used by designers. So designers will use this in order to show, like when they're about to design an app, and I say, oh, I want to implement a Find Friends feature. So I click on Find Friends, and I'll just look at how a bunch of apps implemented Find Friends to get a little design inspiration. So this is actually a design tool. But the point of the story is, like, if I look at this is a table view. You see this one? This one's a table view. This one looks totally different, right? Also a table view. This one, table view. This one, table view. This one is a table view. In fact, I can keep on clicking through all of these, and probably 90% of screens are table views, right? So table views and collection views, I call it the more talented younger sibling of table views, is the backbone of views in iOS. So if you can build a table view, if you feel comfortable building this Rotten Tomatoes app, then you are well on your way to be able to build any screen, at least the static part of it, right? So a lot of the hard part of iOS comes from the interaction, but at least from the static part of it, just rendering the view, as long as you understand over the past week, then you're in amazing shape. So and that's you'll be emphasizing it hopefully in the same exact way to them, right? So the second thing that we're kind of teasing into is APIs. So we're using the MovieDB API, but it's meant also to be an introduction to APIs at large. Um, so normally I do this when I can see people's hands and I can raise people's hands. But like I ran the session at CCSF, and when I looked around the room and I asked who knows what REST is, who knows what CRUD is. Some people had, some people hadn't. I think that's what you should expect as well. So a lot of your students, some are CS majors and some aren't. I didn't know about REST when I was in CS. So you'll want to introduce these two things. So here's how I introduce REST and CRUD. So if you look up REST, it stands for like representational state transfer or something like that. And it's kind of a fancy phrase, and there's a lot of theory about it, but it really boils down to something really, really simple. And whenever you're explaining things as a student leader in class, even though you guys have some of the same technical vocabulary as some of the students, I always like to explain things using as little technical jargon as possible, right? So see if you can kind of challenge yourself to do that, especially since you want to create an environment that's friendly to people who are newer. There's going to be freshmen in the room, sophomores that may not know some of this, may not be as experienced as some of you. And so what is REST? All right, well, so here it is. People started building apps. They built hundreds of apps, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Flickr, whatever. And they started to realize, gosh, all these apps are kind of the same. They're kind of built the same way. And so I'm going to organize that philosophy, and I'm going to call it REST. And so that philosophy is basically every app, no matter all the apps that you guys discussed today, every single one of them, it could be a RESTful app. And there's a concept of like different types of things in your app. So for example, every one of the apps that I heard today, they have a user, right? There's a notion of a user. And everything has properties. So for example, a user has a username, an email, a profile picture URL. So a thing is both the type, which is user, as well as the collection of properties. And then if I'm thinking about, say, Twitter, what else do I have? Well, I have tweets. What's in a tweet? Well, the text of the tweet, the timestamp of the tweet, the number of stars it has, the number of retweets, and that's a tweet. Well, what about Amazon? What's there? Well, there's products. What's in a product? There's the product title, there's product category, product description, and so REST is just this notion. This is like, how do you architect web apps and APIs? And really the most interesting thing about REST is that it's just this collection of things with properties. The second aspect of REST is CRUD. So what do I want to do with these things? Well, people realize, gosh, I'm always doing the same thing. It's create, read, update, and delete. So if I'm tweeting out, that's the C. I'm going to create. So I'm going to hit the compose button. I need to have some way of creating this new tweet. So I have a thing, and I want to create a new thing. Read. So read kind of usually comes in two flavors. It's called an index and a show. So index is a list of things, like a list of movies. But you guys have already the instinct. If I click one of these movies, then it's going to go into the detailed view of that movie, right? That has a lot more information about it. Maybe the trailers, the Rotten Tomatoes score, the Metacritic score. And so typically we of things which has the basic information, and then you can read an individual thing which usually has more extended information. And then I want to update. I want to update my profile picture. I want to update my username. So for each of these things, I want to have the ability to kind of update it. And then finally, I want to be able to delete it. I drunk tweeted something last night, and I was like, I have regret for it, and I want to make it go away, so I want to delete it. So every app that we're going to make in this, every app that's in Silicon Valley, for the most part, there's exceptions, right? But like for the most part, it's built on this philosophy of REST and CRUD, which is there are things, and there's the very same set of things that I want to do with those things. And so I'm going to click on this API. Charlie, how am I doing? Did that audio come through? Okay, perfect. And so speaking of like APIs and things, and so this is a movie, and so the first part about REST and CRUD is that the first part of the information is in the URL. So the URL tells you what resource you're going to. And so I don't know if you've paid much attention to URLs when you're wandering and you're browsing Facebook and Twitter, but kind of like start to scrutinize it when you're going to different websites and look at the pattern of the URL here. You're going to notice that they're very, very similar, right? So this is API version 3. Their resource type is movie. And it's going to even be a more specific type of movie. It's going to be the set of movies that's now playing. And so I'm going to get something this is called JSON, which is a way of kind of representing data. And this type is called a dictionary. So I know that many of you guys know what a dictionary is. Check when you're running the class to see if anyone doesn't know what a dictionary is, and just see if you can kind of vaguely explain it. I like to analogize it as a filing cabinet where imagine this is a kind of a virtual filing cabinet where these things are tabs, the folder tabs that are visible, and I want to peek into there. So for example, I want to look at the results in the filing cabinet. I open up that folder, and then here I get a bunch of little dictionaries. So you can almost just stretch this analogy. Imagine there's a little miniature filing cabinet inside of that filing cabinet, and now it itself has a set of little folder tabs. And so you'll want to explain for those of students who don't know what a dictionary is roughly what it is. But then I can see that I can pluck every kind of information that I want from this resource from this dictionary. And every API, once you start getting into it, looks pretty much the same. The only exception is Facebook, because Facebook's a pain in the butt. But everybody else, has roughly a very similar shaped API, and that's the other point of this story this week. Okay, so what you guys are going to do next is break people up into small groups. So you're going to say everybody get into groups of 3, and we're going to have a quick lightning discussion. And so this will be, at least for this week, extremely short because the questions are kind of basic. So you're going to, every week has a discussions tab, and so you'll say, hey, break up into groups of 3, make sure you introduce yourself to each other again, and then just take turns going through these questions. And so let's see if we can run through these really quickly. I know I'm going a little bit over time, but I think we'll be done in another 5 minutes or so. So who can answer this question? When you run into an exception, this class is not key value coding compliant. What do I do when that happens? Yeah, so like there's going to be a connections tab in your Xcode. So if I look at my storyboard, I can click on any screen here, and I can look and see every connection that's here. And sometimes they'll become invalid because let's say you delete the property or you rename it. This is going to turn into an exclamation point. If you run it, you're going to get a key value coding exception. So another takeaway is that exceptions happen right here, and you're going to, you need to look at this console log in order to understand what the problem was. So that's the key value coding one. It's a very mysterious one. So another person, what is an outlet and when is it used? Great. And so like I've seen this question come up where sometimes people will grab the wrong element here. Like let's say that I intended to grab an outlet to say this search bar right here. So my kind of wheel is spinning right real quick. Okay, and so let's say that I make it, and it's okay. Here it's back. So I want to make this element. I want this search bar right here, right? So I kind of drag this search bar, and I say my search bar. And then I made a mistake. I noticed that this UI view is it's not a UI view. It's a UI. I happen to know it's a UI search bar. So I changed the text here. Can anyone tell me why that was not okay? So actually, like Kyle, maybe you can stick with it for a little bit longer. So why was that not okay for me to change this from a UI view to a UI search bar? Because that is what it is. Yeah. So basically, what I did is I want to link to this search bar, so I deleted it. Can you see my screen? Okay. So I want the search bar, so I kind of grabbed it and I said, my my search bar right here. I accidentally put it as type UI view. Do you see that? So I'm going to say, oh no, I'm going to make that correction. It's actually a UI search bar. So that ought to fix it. Why is that wrong? Do you happen to know? No, you're exactly right. So if I look, what had happened was I tried to hit that search bar, but I missed for various reasons. And then so I noticed that my search bar is actually connected to some, you know, willy-nilly view. So the search bar is connected to some other random view, right? Which is actually the network error view. So I didn't connect it to this thing, I connected to that. So I actually need to delete those connections and reconnect it. So anyway, outlets, as you guys are mentioning, that are ways to connect or name things that you've designed at design time. So what is target action? So again, when you guys are in the class, it's good to kind of isolate a group of folks, not pick on any one person necessarily, but kind of like get a set of people. So let's see if I can call it like Marcos, Steve, Alberto, Sanaya, and see if any of you guys have thoughts on actions. So you're halfway right. So there's something that on one side, on the other side, there's a function that runs. So of the other kind of three people that I called out just now, so he said a view, but that's not quite, it's almost there, but that's not quite right. So it's something connected to a function. And what is that something? It does make sense. So if for a text field, do you think text fields have one event or more than one event? You're right. So target action is about selecting an event and connecting it to a function. So that you might run one function when you tap into the text field, you might run another function when you edit it, and you might run another function when the user ends editing. So target action is about tying an event to an action. And then we're going to get more sophisticated with this as the weeks pass, because we're even going to tie gestures and other things to a function ultimately that runs. And kind of, I'll combine the last discussion into one question, which is, why do we have UI table view data source? So for those of you who've done web programming before, you just lay out the divs that you would want to lay out, and if you're doing React or React Native, then that creates divs for as many movies as I have. So what is all this rigmarole of UI table view data source and table view dot data source is equal to self, and then these functions? And why am I going through this kind of seemingly complex thing? Let me call out some more folks. How about Steve, Marcos, Fatima, and Hannah? So you're exactly right. And then let's say at this point, right? So you can see my screen. I have, I don't know if you can see my screen, but I have this collection view visible, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 posters kind of visible. How many times has self for row at index been called at this point? Even though I have, say, 20 movies? Ah, I see. So that's exactly right, right? So no, you're completely right. So that's why we go through this kind of pain in the butt kind of dance, is because it's automatically, what we get for that behavior is it's automatically recycling the cells for us, kind of, if we do it the exact right pattern. So as I'm scrolling this off, and for those of you who can't see my screen, I'm about to scroll a cell off the screen. Now it's off. That cell is actually collected by the table view or the collection view. It's actually kind of put into a reusable bucket. And then that cell that just rolled off, which is, say, Star Wars, and this cell that just rolled on, which is Daddy's Home, that was actually the Star Wars cell. And we just reconfigured its appearance. That way we're actually working with a very small number of cells that are constantly being reconfigured and reused. And that allows us to have it for scrolling. So scrolling is a big deal in iOS. You want to have 60 frames a second whenever you're scrolling. So the way that you guys run this discussion session is, again, split into small groups, let them try to discuss a little bit, and then wander around. And when you hear people kind of getting stuck, or just they've spent enough time on it, again, part of this is also just about student bonding, right, and them getting to know each other. So that's That's one aspect of it. And so once you kind of wander around, you hear that they've gone far enough, then call everybody back and say, all right, let's kind of discuss it together, and then call different groups to answer these questions, and then you'll have the answers yourself as well ahead of time, so you can kind of answer it too. So that's discussion phase, and now the final phase is just the conclusion. So the conclusion is just to remind them, okay, there is something that you guys are doing, and you're trained to do this. You're problem solvers, and once you hit a problem, you're trained just to bulldog and just destroy that problem, right? And um, for those of you who are kind of seasoned CS people, does this situation sound familiar? You have worked for 6 hours, and you realize you were stuck on something so stupid. I know you guys don't want to mute, but you guys are probably you must be smiling thinking of that situation, because that's life as an engineer. If you can't deal with that, then you should probably leave engineering, because no matter how experienced you get, it's about problem solving. So I kind of analogized iOS to learning how to work on a car, in the sense that it's pretty simple, right? Once I learn how to change the oil, it's pretty straightforward. But there's another aspect of cars, which is like my car won't start, and how do you figure out why it's not starting? And so like you're the kind of detective hat that you need. I think the challenge with Xcode is twofold. Basically, understand how to debug it when it's not working well. And so what you need to tell the students is like, normally you would just keep on hammering on that problem, but not in this class. In this class, you have to put your ego aside. You have to reach out, and student leaders, it's up to you guys to kind of create an environment and set an example where people are reaching out. For people who are following the Slack, you can see that people are aggressively asking us for help. I was answering questions up until 3 or 4 in the morning last night. And so once you have a question, start reaching out to these various channels. If one signal that we're going to be looking at is for the homework submissions. If we see like, oh, I spent 20 hours on this and I only did the required, that's a huge sign that person didn't reach out. The homework assignments, I could fly through this assignment in probably 30 minutes, right? That doesn't mean that it should take 30 minutes. Like I said, it should take 10 hours, but that's because you're stacking it with so many polished optionals, right? So the smarter person is reaching out for help more. And so you need to really, really emphasize it for this. And trust me, you got to do this every week, because despite this, the second week, people are still going to come up to you and say, oh man, I was stuck on that for like 3 hours. And like, you have to be like, hold on a second. Why'd you not reach out for help? So you have to call people out on that when you hear it. That's it. Add a roll, and then you're going to roll into this a homework kind of session where you're going to work on the homeworks together, walk around, see if any people have any questions. This session, as you can tell, will be a little bit longer than the average session. We try to do 1 hour, 1 hour, but this one might bleed into like an hour and a half, like we have today, for this first part, and then for the second part, they can either chill out longer. Like the University of Florida stayed for 3 hours the first day, but do you guys have any questions? So it's a combination of both. So you're not going to know a lot of people in the class, or you may or may not, right? So if people already just really want to work together, that's totally cool. So what we're going to do is, over the next several weeks, we're going to have a process where we'll have group mixers, and we'll have some app brainstorming sessions together, and then we'll ultimately fill out a survey where you'll specify who you want to work with based on what you've learned about your peers. And if you still want to work with your buddy that you came into the class with, that's totally fine. But you might also meet some other really cool people in the class that want to work on the same idea that you want to work on. So ultimately, it'll come back to the survey results, which the students fill out on the survey results. That's correct. The only situation that you turn in lab work is a student has an excused absence for lab, and so they have to turn in the lab either before or by the same time the rest of the students are doing their labs. So if I know ahead of time that I'm going to be, I need to go back home, or I have a project, you just need to do your lab ahead of time, or you can ask the student leader for an extension. But in that case, if you miss the lab, then you do submit it. You just email and say, okay, here, we'll check out. I went ahead and did the Instagram app at home. In general, it would be really helpful if you guys use different repos for each project. It really helps our graders get organized, and we don't grade the labs. We don't. That's right. Charlie is still processing all the top tip calculator submissions right now. The timing is always pretty tight, right? So Sunday, I think at midnight is when they're due, and they're definitely going to be available before the class. Charlie, do you have a goal for like what the turnaround time is going to be? Yeah, great question. So the general protocol is it's two-tiered in general. So for example, there's like pretty much a million channels. You should see only your university plus like some of these topic channels. So I've kind of Slack open right now, and there's a channel called Saturday Hack. And so for Saturday Hack as well as all channels, I'll try first to answer your question via Slack, and often I can. But occasionally, we're debugging an issue, and I just, it's taking too long, and so I'll ask you to jump into a Google Hangout. And so if you could bring headphones, just if you just always have headphones in general, and just tell the students to like try to always have headphones with them, then whenever they get into kind of trouble, we can send them a link, and then we'll screen share with them, and we'll just chat with them. But we'll first try to answer the question via Slack. Yes, that's correct. On you guys because you guys have to support them as well as be a week ahead and work on your own stuff. So part of that is we do give you the solutions ahead of time, and you should always feel free to lean on your mentors. Don't be shy. Or if tell us if the mentors aren't being responsive either, because they are, and they've kind of made this commitment. But if they're not being responsive, then they're supposed to be responsive. So then message Charlie and say, hey, look, we're struggling. So don't be shy to communicate what's going on, especially to Charlie, because he has the power to kind of do all kinds of stuff and make all kinds of improvements. By that, then mention it to him so we can solve that problem. But yeah,